Hello guys. Tonight we begin with what it meant to be a washerwoman in 18th century Istanbul. You wake before dawn. The air is thick with moisture, even though the sun has yet to rise. And your breath curls faintly in the cold air of your small stone home near the base of a steep alley in Galata. Your fingers are already sore from yesterday, but there is no time to rest them today. There's washing to be done. Always washing. Being a washerwoman in 18th century Istanbul isn't something you chose because it paid well. It didn't. Nor because it was respected. Wasn't. You do it because you have no husband, no male protector, and no inheritance. You do it because it feeds your daughter and gives your elderly aunt one more year before she loses the last of her teeth. You do it because the empire has no room for idle women in your position. The city itself is already stirring. You hear? The distant clatter of donkey hooves on cobblestones, the creak of cartwheels. Someone pours wash water from a window. A muezzin's voice begins the call to prayer, echoing across the rooftops. It's the kind of sound that disappears into your routine. You no longer bow your head or raise your hands unless you're alone. Right now, you're not. You're with the basin, the soap, okay? And the load of linen from the merchant's house 2 doors down. You carry your load wrapped tightly in a cloth, balanced on your head. You don't have a proper basin of your own, so you head down to the communal washing stones, where a curved wall juts out near a public fountain. It's not official, but everyone in your neighborhood knows that spot belongs to you this time of day. You've claimed it by showing up earlier and staying later than the rest. The stone is cold against your knees as you kneel and unwrap the bundle. There's the scent of oil, sweat, and old milkwort, the linen absorbed while in use. You rub it in a rhythm your hands have memorized over and over against a hard wash stone. You dip it, lift it, soap it again with a lye-based bar made by a woman in Ayub. It's rough, smells like ash and bitter fat, but it does the job. Linen is stubborn, especially when it comes from rich homes where they dine with garlic, spill sauces, and sit for hours in the same stiff garments. The merchant's wife insists the linens be returned as white as her wedding veil. Though she's long since stopped smiling like she did in the first weeks of her marriage, her cook leaves you messages sometimes, little coins pressed between the folds. It's a kindness not from charity, but from respect. You don't gossip, and they appreciate that. You have 1 bucket of clean water left. You pour it slowly over the fabric to rinse out the soap. Your arms ache. You rotate your shoulder to push the sting from the muscle. Pain stays. It always does. A younger girl arrives new to the neighborhood. She's trying to find her spot among the washerwomen. There is a silent rule about these spaces. You do not speak unless you must. And you never reach for another woman's basin. She waits for you to finish before kneeling at the edge of the washstone, careful not to touch your side. Her mother likely sent her, a mother who can no longer scrub as you do. Once you finish your merchant load, you wring out the linen tightly, fold it with military precision, and place it in a dry cloth. The drying will happen later, strung across the narrow courtyard of your building, away from the public eye. You walk back uphill, basket under arm, breath short, legs burning. The hills of Istanbul do not forgive weak ankles. At home, your aunt stirs lentils in a chipped pot. Your daughter sleeps, still her forehead slightly flushed. You sigh, looking at her face. She had a cough last night. The dampness in the air lingers in the lungs, especially of children who breathe steam off, drying laundry all day. There was a time you thought this would be temporary, just until your husband returned from his naval conscription. But he never did. No body, no word, just silence from the direction of the sea. You'd wept once. It's a long, ugly cry into the sheets you now wash for others. Mid-morning brings a knock. On your door, a palace doors boy delivers a bundle wrapped in silk. Not the palace, but the summer residence of a minor dignitary. Still important. The wash is heavy, finely embroidered. It's a good sign. Better money, more prestige. But it comes with expectations. No tears in the lace, no color bleeding from the edges of red-hemmed napkins. You must soak it first, with vinegar, to keep it from bleeding. The smell of vinegar and lye makes your eyes water. The lines on your hands crack, small red splits appearing in the folds of your knuckles. You remember when they were smooth, years ago, before work replaced softness with callous. In the courtyard later, the neighbor girl watches you hang the linen. She says nothing, but she's learning. You see it in her eyes. One day, this might be her full-time life too. You wonder if she knows that already. The sky darkens, slightly clouds rolling from the north. You consider pulling in the wash early, but there is a superstition about taking in linens before they dry fully. Something about locking in the illness. You've never understood it, but you've also never tested it. Your body settles into the rhythm of repetition. Wash, rinse, wring, carry, hang, rest. Then again, there's dignity in it. Maybe, or just endurance mistaken for dignity. Either way, you have survived another day, and that is not nothing in this city. You lie down next to your daughter, exhausted, wondering, if this is all life ever becomes rinsing away the dirt of other scan, something of yourself remain unstained. The basin by the wall is not yours. Not in any official sense. It belongs to the city, like the fountain next to it, the street it faces, the trees that drop their brittle leaves into the gutter. But for almost 10 years now, you have claimed it. At first, you stood behind the older women, elbows tucked, watching how they scrubbed, how they soaked, how they judged the stains, not with despair, but with strategy. You learned where to place your knee on the edge of the stone so it wouldn't slip. You learned how long to let linen steep before bilillo sweat rings turned faint. You never asked questions. The washerwomen didn't allow for idle talk, let alone curious girls. But you watched, you waited. And when the older ones began disappearing, some to death, some to marriage, some simply to weakness, you stepped forward. You took the corner of the stone basin, and no one stopped you. The stone is worn now, cupped slightly where your weight settles each day. Your fingernails, despite your best efforts, remain lined with soap, grit, and broken at the corners. In winter, your skin splits. In summer, it itches. No matter the season, your fingers no longer look like a young woman's fingers, but they're strong, perhaps stronger than some men's. You never thought strength would come this way through repetition, through silence, through cold water at dawn. Today, you arrive early, earlier than most mornings. There's a nervous energy in your chest. The boy from the palace compound said the steward might inspect your work himself this week. He won't speak to you, but he'll inspect. Your aunt said it was a test. You pass, they might add you to a roster of reliable women who wash for the court on rotation. Not palace washerwomen's, the salaried ones wear uniforms and have hammam privileges. But still, it's more than what you have now. An extra coin per load. Better cloth. Fewer stains from spoiled food and bodily mess. Nobility, dirty things. Differently, you light your oil lamp and pack your soap and your rags. The bar of soap today is half size. You'll need to use ash water to extend it. You mutter a quiet curse about inflation, though you don't use that word. You say prices keep climbing like the goats, a phrase your mother said before you buried her during the plague years. When you reach the basin, it's not empty. A woman sits where you usually kneel. You freeze. Her face is unfamiliar. It's not young, but not old enough to be respected. She wears her scarf tied in the hill village style, meaning she's new to the city. A migrant, perhaps from the eastern valleys. You blink slowly, and she doesn't meet your eye. There is a silent code among washerwomen, and she is breaking it. You set down your bundle with deliberate slowness. Your breath is still. The world shrinks to the space between you and the stone. A pigeon flutters above the fountain. You wait. One breath. Two. The woman glances up, then back at her laundry. She knows. She saw you hesitate. She knows she's taken your spot. You step forward, firm, not rushed, and kneel at the far end of the basin. You do not greet her. She does not greet you. But the space between you is charged now, thick with tension. You scrub harder than you need to, lifting the linen with unnecessary force, not to show off, but to remind her. She watches you from the corner of her eye. You catch it. A child appears at her side, a boy 5 or 6. He coughs once, a dry, harsh sound. She hushes him and hands him a crust of bread. You glance at the boy's shoes. He has none. You don't like her? Not yet. But you understand. By the time the sun is properly up, the space between you has become quiet again. Not warm, not friendly, but professional. She moves aside half a hand's width, enough for you to dip your bundle more freely. A gesture. You nod. Barely by noon, you both wring out your linens in silence, hang them on separate cords. As he doesn't, follow you home. But the next morning, she is there again nearlier. This time, you still don't know her name. In Istanbul, washerwomen are a breed of their own. You see them on the ferry landings and in the hammam corners, carrying loads that sag like drowned corpses. You can tell them by the towels on their heads, the twisted cloths they use to hold laundry high. You can tell them by their arms, by the slope of their backs, by the way their hands stay red, no matter the season. You pass another one in the market. You recognize her from the Hagia Sophia district. She does the nuns' laundry, even though the sisters never admit it aloud. Her left wrist is bound with cloth. Too much wringing, probably. You nod. She nods. Nothing else is said in the wash-house world. Gossip is currency, but it is spent carefully. Your neighbors sometimes ask why you never work inside the hammam itself. It's warmer, they say. Less lifting, more scrubbing. The hours are longer, yes, and the client's rude, but the pay is regular. You tell them the steam gives you headaches, that you hate the smell of perfumed oils in small rooms. What you don't say is, you once knew someone who worked there, and she never came out again, just disappeared. A girl like you, with skin like yours, kind to hammam patrons sometimes requested for private massage. You never saw her body, heard the whispers, better the basin by the wall, even with strangers. The girl returns on the 4th day with a bar of soap to share. She waits for you to speak first. You don't, but you cut the soap and give her half. That is your answer. Later that week, the palace steward arrives. Not the head, one an underling. He says nothing, just looks over your drying lines, frowns. Once, picks up a towel and holds it to the sun. No stains, no fraying. He grunts and hands it back. The boy with him gives you 2 extra coins. You pretend not to notice, but inside, your ribs loosen a little. You exhale in a way you haven't since your husband disappeared at sea. You tell your aunt the good news that evening. She smiles, with her lips only not her eyes. She is worried. She always is. About your daughter, about the newcomer, about your hands. They are stiff again today. The joints hurt to bend. You soak them in vinegar water before sleep. That night, you dream of the sea. It is gray and wide, and someone calls your name from beyond the waves. You wake with your blanket tangled around your legs. You rise, dress, bind your hair. The soap is almost gone again as you open the door. Wonder not for the first time if you'll spend your whole life like this, waking before light, guarding your stone, scrubbing for strangers. And if not this, then what else could there ever be? It's not the title you chose, but it's the one you carry, widow. In Galata, the neighbors refer to you that way now, not cruelly, just routinely. The washerwoman, the widow, quiet one whose daughter coughs too much. In a city that bursts at the seams with noises, colors, can the rhythm of trade ships from 3 continents. Your presence doesn't disturb. You're one of the many invisible women who keep everything clean without being seen. When you first arrived here, you were newly married, barely more than a girl. Your husband was a boatman, not by family trade, but because the empire always needed hands along the Golden Horn. He was not wealthy, but steady. You'd imagine a home like your mother's fine draped eaves, an indoor stove, some silks for winter. He called you his jewel. That was before the press gang came to conscript him for a voyage. A long assignment, naval duty. The official said he'd be back by harvest. That was 3 harvests ago. His absence reshaped everything. First, the neighbors pulled away, worried that your bad luck might drift over their own doorsteps. A teen came. The debt small at first. A butcher's bill unpaid. A borrowed pot unreturned. A blanket pawned. You sold your jewelry 1 piece at a time until even your wedding bangles were gone. You tried sewing work, then laundry for a neighbor's inn. Eventually, you claimed a basin by the public fountain, and from there, your life became divided into hours of boiling, scrubbing, rinsing, wringing, and waiting. The title, widow, doesn't even come with certainty. You don't know if he's dead. He might be in another port, in another city, on another ship, or in the sea. You know better than to speak of him aloud. Now there's no reward in dragging sorrow into your daily labor. But at night, when your daughter's breathing becomes shallow and your bones hum with fatigue, the quiet feels full of his absence. You fold laundry under the eaves today, watching the city move below. From your window, you can see across rooftops, with the haze over the Bosphorus. Smoke rises from morning cook fires, and the bells from an Armenian church chimed faintly through the fog. The city is layered like laundry piles: Turks, Greeks, Armenians, Jews, foreigners from beyond the sea. Everyone stacking into the same streets, avoiding eye contact, pressing coins into palms. You've come to know the rhythms of the street. The man with the spice basket will shout 3 times by midday. The ECI cove seller, the one with the limp, always calls out before the second prayer. You work among these familiar calls, tuning them out like birdsong. Your daughter plays nearby, folding rags into shapes. Her cough is lighter today, but it's never fully gone. You worry the damp walls are to blame. You've tried airing out the room, drying herbs, even stuffing dried lavender into her pillow, but illness seems to cling like soot. The neighbor from upstairs comes down to barter. She has a length of cloth course, used for wrapping meat or bread. She wants it boiled and bleached. Can't pay in coin, but she offers oil for the lamp. You hesitate, then nod. Oil is oil, and your soap stock is running low again. This is how much of your life works, now bartering, calculating, trading labor for goods you once bought without thought. You know who pays in coin, who pays in eggs, and who always asks for credit. Sometimes, a foreign merchant servant arrives with orders: lace from Europe, silk undergarments, perfume-drenched handkerchiefs. These you wash carefully. It's one fray and they won't call again. The woman who took part of your basin last week now nods at you when she sees you. Her name is Elif. Her boy is called Sem. You don't ask where her husband is, and she doesn't ask about yours. The rules are unspoken. Don't pry. Don't pity. Don't get close unless you're sure the other will stay. Together, you to form a sort of rhythm. She brings scraps of wood. Sometimes firewood is always short-end. You share. Vinegar when she runs out, if you correct her once. When she scalds a linen without rinsing, she doesn't argue, just listens. The palace linen arrives again, and this time there's more of it. Someone has added scarves, napkins, underthings with silk threads. You feel the tension in your stomach rise one mistake with these, and they might not return. Your aunt warns you again. The steward is the kind who notices if a fold is crooked or if the scent of vinegar lingers too long. You boil the water in the courtyard, soaking the scarves gently first. One by one, you rinse, soap, soak again, and lay them on the cloth lines. The wind that day is strong. You tie each cloth tightly to prevent them blowing into the neighbor's garden. That happened once last winter. A silk handkerchief fell into a cooking pot. You paid for that mistake with 3 weeks of free laundry. The work is slow today, and the cold creeps into your fingers. You pause once, watching your daughter help your aunt shell beans. There is something fragile in that scene. For a moment, you see what your life could have looked like. A quiet domestic life. A home without laundry bundles. A kitchen with fresh bread. A room that doesn't smell of damp cloth. But the day breaks that illusion quickly. Tears, holding her boy. Keys flushed. Sick, like your daughter had been last winter. She asks, quietly, if you have any dried ginger root. You do. You give it to her, without charge. That's how trust builds here, through little acts, never spoken about again. That night, you climb to the roof. It's a place you like, flat stones, warmed by the day's sun. You sit there and look out over the city. Domes gleam in the distance. The minarets glow faintly in moonlight. The sea is just a darker strip between the lights. You listen. Somewhere down below, someone sings a lullaby. You lean your head back against the stones, sore from the day's labor, and wonder, how long can a woman carry on like this, scrubbing, boiling, rinsing before she forgets who she was before the work began? There are coins in the pouch today. It's not many, 3 small silver acts, dull with use but enough to make your breath still in your chest for a heartbeat. You hadn't expected coin. Most customers pay with oil, vinegar, or promises. A handful of lentils, a heel of bread, going means someone in the household cared or was being watched, or feared stains being discovered by the wrong person. The pouch is knotted into the corner of the linen napkin, discreet, as if to say, thank you, but don't mention this. You untie it with care and pocket the coins before your daughter sees them. She's begun to understand the difference between real money and barter, and when a child learns that, it becomes harder to protect her from the weight of need. The money changes your plans. You are going to ask Elif for what again? One more shared bundle of soft pine that smokes too much and burns too fast. Now, with these coins, you can visit the soap seller directly. It's a good one. It's a woman with lye cakes that last longer than waterlogged ash bars. Her shop is at the bottom of the hill, wedged between a cobbler stall and a place that sells sweets you can't afford. You make your way there late in the morning, careful not to draw attention to your purse. 3 coins can disappear fast in Istanbul. One knock, one shove in the market, and they're gone. When you arrive, the seller gives you a crooked smile. Washerwoman of Galata, she calls you, as if that's your title now. Maybe it is. She offers you a small square of soap that smells of lemon peel and bay. You press the coins into her hand and hold your breath. She does not count them, just nods. You're in her good graces again for now. You walk back up the hill with the soap wrapped tight in a handkerchief. It feels like a treasure, almost sacred. The smell is sharp and clean, unlike the world you live in. You think, briefly, of slicing it in half to make it last longer, but it's too fine to cheat. You'll use it as on the next noble load. The scarves with gold trim are still waiting. One wash with inferior soap, and they'll darken at the folds. At home, your aunt sees your new soap and raises an eyebrow. More palace work, she asks. You nod. She doesn't press. She never does, but her eyes settle on the wrapped soap for longer than necessary. You wonder if she's remembering her own youth when she had softer things and didn't have to ask questions. The work that day is heavy. 2 loads from the Greek widow who lives near the mosque, a pair of underrobes from the rug dealer, and a dirty, stiff bedcloth from the stable keeper. The smell of the latter nearly knocks you back. You boil it first, twice, before even attempting to scrub. Elif joins you by midday, her boy asleep in a basket beside her. She carries a new linen sacks. Someone is trusting her with better cloth. Her hands are red from overuse. She asks if you'll check the hems on a towel. She's unsure if the seam can handle more scrubbing. You do? It's close to tearing. You show her where to stitch it before washing again. The two of you work in near silence, the wind rippling the edges of your drying cloths like sails. You hear distant laughter from a schoolyard, the ringing of a street peddler's bell, and the thump of a butcher's cleaver. Istanbul breathes around you like a massive creature, always awake, always hungry. That evening, your daughter's cough worsens again, not violently, just steadily. She hides it, trying not to alarm you. You sit with her near the hearth, warming her feet and feeding her warm broth. The pouch of coins is already gone spent on soap, lamp oil, and a single apple you sliced thin and fed to her piece by piece. Your aunt suggests a healer, but you know how expensive that would be. The apothecary charges more for a visit than you earn in 2 days of boiling and scrubbing. You consider asking the steward's boy if the palace has discarded herbs. Sometimes the court physicians throw away scraps that common folk can boil into tea. You'd have to be careful. Asking too boldly could mean being banned from palace laundry altogether. You go to the fountain again before dawn. Elif is already there. She nods in greeting, but her face is pale. She says nothing until after midday, when her boy's fever becomes too much. She has to leave. You say nothing, but when she hesitates, glancing down at her half-washed pile, you lift a sheet from her bundle and begin scrubbing. It's not charity, it's trade, though not in coins. It's the trade of shared exhaustion. Tomorrow, she'll do the same for you, maybe, or she won't, but you help her now. When you return home, you find a cloth bundle at your doorstep. It's not from Elif. Inside is a small bag of dried herbs, tightly tied and sweet-smelling. There's no note, but you suspect the steward's boy. You said nothing aloud, but your question had traveled somehow. Perhaps one of the palace maids overheard, or maybe Elif whispered your worries to someone she knew. Istanbul is like that. Nothing is private for long, even if no one speaks. That night, you brew a tea with the herbs and cradle your daughter's head in your lap. She sleeps easier, her breath less labored. You sit awake long after, your hands sore, your arms scratched, but your thoughts still tumbling. If a few silver coins can change a whole day, how different would your life be if you had a pouch full of them every week? What would you spend them on? Soap? Surely. Better cloth. A doctor's visit. A stronger roof. More food for your girl. But then what? What if coins could buy more than things? What if they could buy silence, peace, time? There's a knock at the door before dawn unusual, even for a city that wakes early. You know immediately who it is. The palace boy. He comes quietly, without ceremony. In his arms is a bundled mass of cloth, wrapped in a patterned shawl. You open the door without speaking, take the bundle, and give him a nod. He doesn't wait for things, just turns and disappears into the alley. Sandals slapping stone, already onto his next delivery. Inside, you place the bundle on the floor. Your aunt eyes it cautiously. This is not the regular week, she says. You know. Palace laundry only comes once every 10 days. This is a special load. It's an urgent one. You untie the shawl. The linen is finer than usual, softer, with a delicate embroidery. But it's sturdy. It's sturdier than anything you've seen come out of the palace before. There are smudges of something dark, worn, or blood, perhaps sand, a faint imprint of soot. It's a kind of stains that don't come from dinner or servants. Mishandling. You've seen this before, years ago, after the Janissary uprising near the barracks. The telltale signs of hurried cleanups after violence. This laundry tells a story. Even if you don't ask what it is, there's a dress, too. Not a servant's robe, but a woman's garment, silk lined with cotton. Floral trim along the hem. Ruined, You hesitate before touching it. Then you gather your tools, lukewarm water first, then a linen towel to pat down the areas where silk bleeds into cotton. You will need to use vinegar and cold ash water, no soap. Not yet. If you scrub it directly, you'll destroy the threads. This load will take all day. Your aunt does not ask questions, but she watches you closely. Her hands shake slightly as she stirs the lentils. She saw the red blotches too. She knows that this laundry did not come from a wedding. You work in silence for the first few hours. Your daughter sleeps late, and Elif doesn't come today. It's just you, hunched over a dress that doesn't belong to anyone you'll ever meet, trying to make it look untouched by whatever touched it before. The hem is torn in places, small, deliberate cuts, maybe from shoes, maybe from dragging. You clean without thought now. Movement, rinse, press, soak, lift, lay flat, breathe. By midday, your daughter wakes. She's better eyes, brighter, breath less shallow. You give her the rest of the apple peel from yesterday. She chews slowly, watching it. Is that for a queen? She asked. You smile faintly. No, someone who works for one, maybe. She considers. That for a while? Do queens wash their own clothes? No, she frowns. Why not? You pause. There's no answer that makes sense to a child. Domes gleam in the distance. The minarets glow faintly in moonlight. The sea is just a darker strip between the lights. You listen. Somewhere down below, someone sings a lullaby. You lean your head back against the stones, sore from the day's labor, and wonder, how long can a woman carry on like this, scrubbing, boiling, rinsing, before she forgets who she was before the work began? 8. There are coins in the pouch today. Not many, 3 small silver acts, dull with use but enough to make your breath still in your chest for a heartbeat. You hadn't expected coin. Most customers pay with oil, vinegar, or promises. It's a handful of lentils, a heel of bread. But real coin means someone in the household cared, or was being watched, or feared stains being discovered by the wrong person. The pouch is knotted into the corner of the linen napkin, discreet, as if to say, thank you, but don't mention this. You untie it with care and pocket the coins before your daughter sees them. She's begun to understand the difference between real money and barter, and when a child learns that, it becomes harder to protect her from the weight of need. The money changes your plans. You are going to ask Elif for wood again, one more shared bundle of soft pine that smokes too much and burns too fast. Now, with these coins, you can visit the soap seller directly. The good one. It's the woman with lye cakes that last longer than waterlogged ash bars. Her shop is at the bottom of the hill, wedged between a cobbler's stall and a place that sells sweets you can't afford. You make your way there late in the morning, careful not to draw attention to your purse. 3 coins can disappear fast in Istanbul. One knock, one shove in the market, and they're gone. When you arrive, the seller gives you a crooked smile. Washerwoman of Galata. She calls you, as if that's your title now. Maybe it is. She offers you a small square of soap that smells of lemon peel and bay. You press the coins into her hand and hold your breath. She does not count them, just nods. You're in her good graces again for now. You walk back up the hill with the soap wrapped tight in a handkerchief. It feels like a treasure, almost sacred. The smell is sharp and clean, unlike the world you live in. You think, briefly, of slicing it in half to make it last longer, but it's too fine to cheat. You'll use it as is on the next noble load. The scarves with gold trim are still waiting. One wash with inferior soap, and they'll darken at the folds dotted home. Your aunt sees your new soap and raises an eyebrow. More palace work? She asks. You nod. She doesn't press. She never does. But her eyes settle on the wrapped soap for longer than necessary. You wonder if she's remembering her own youth, when she had softer things and didn't have to ask questions. The work that day is heavy. 2 loads from the Greek widow who lives near the mosque, a pair of underrobes from the rug dealer, and a dirty, stiff bedcloth from the stable keeper. The smell of the latter nearly knocks you back. You boil it first, twice, before even attempting to scrub. Elif joins you by midday, her boy asleep in a basket beside her. She carries a new linen sacks. One is trussing her with better cloth. Her hands are red from overuse. She asks if you'll check the hems on a towel. She's unsure if the seam can handle more scrubbing. You do? It's close to tearing. You show her where to stitch it before washing again. The two of you work in near silence, the wind rippling the edges of your drying cloths like sails. You hear distant laughter from a schoolyard, the ringing of a street peddler's bell, and the thump of a butcher's cleaver. Istanbul breathes around you like a massive creature, always awake, always hungry. That evening, your daughter's cough worsens again, not violently, just steadily. She hides it, trying not to alarm you. You sit with her near the hearth, warming her feet and feeding her warm broth. The pouch of coins is already gone spent on soap, lamp oil, and a single apple you sliced thin and fed to her piece by piece. Your aunt suggests a healer, but you know how expensive that would be. The apothecary charges more for a visit than you earn in 2 days of boiling and scrubbing. You consider asking the steward's boy if the palace has discarded herbs. Sometimes the court physicians throw away scraps that common folk can boil into tea. You'd have to be careful. Asking too boldly could mean being banned from palace laundry altogether. You go to the fountain again before dawn. Elif is already there. She nods in greeting, but her face is pale. She says nothing until after midday, when her boy's fever becomes too much. She has to leave. You say nothing, but when she hesitates, glancing down at her half-washed pile, you lift a sheet from her bundle and begin scrubbing. It's not charity, it's trade, though not in coins. It's a trade of shared exhaustion. Tomorrow, she'll do the same for you, maybe, or she won't. But you help her now. When you return home, you find a cloth bundle at your doorstep. It's not from Elif. Inside is a small bag of dried herbs, tightly tied and sweet-smelling. There's no note, but you suspect the steward's boy. You said nothing aloud, but your question had traveled somehow. Perhaps one of the palace maids overheard. Maybe Elif whispered your worries to someone she knew. Istanbul is like that. Nothing is private for long, even if no one speaks. That night, you brew a tea with the herbs and cradle your daughter's head in your lap. She sleeps easier, her breath less labored. You sit awake long after, your hands sore, your arms scratched, but your thoughts still tumbling. If a few silver coins can change a whole day, how different would your life be if you had a pouch full of them every week? What would you spend them on? Soap, surely, better cloth, a doctor's visit, a stronger roof, more food for your girl. But then what? What if coins could buy more than things? What if they could buy silence, peace, time? There's a knock at the door before dawn unusual, even for a city that wakes early. You know immediately who it is. The palace boy. He comes quietly, without ceremony. In his arms is a bundled mass of cloth, wrapped in a patterned shawl. You open the door without speaking, take the bundle, and give him a nod. He doesn't wait for thanks, just turns and disappears into the alley, sandals slapping stone, already onto his next delivery. Inside, you place the bundle on the floor. Your aunt eyes it cautiously. This is not the regular week, she says. You. No. Palace laundry only comes once every 10 days. This is a special load, an urgent one. You untie the shawl. The linen is finer than usual, softer, with delicate embroidery, but it's dirty. Dirtier than anything you've seen come out of the palace before. There are smudges of something dark green or blood, perhaps the faint imprint of soot. Tea, the kind of stains that don't come from dinner or servants. Mishandling. You've seen this before. Years ago, after the Janissary uprising near the barracks. The telltale signs of hurried cleanups after violence. This laundry tells a story, even if you don't ask what it is. There's a dress, too. Not a servant's robe, but a woman's garment, silk, lined with cotton. Floral trim along the hem. Ruined. You hesitate before touching it. Then you gather your tools, lukewarm water first, then a linen towel to pat down the areas where silk bleeds into cotton. You will need to use vinegar and cold ash water, no soap. Not yet. If you scrub it directly, you'll destroy the threads. This load will take all day. Your aunt does not ask questions, but she watches you closely. Her hands shake slightly as she stirs the lentils. She saw the red blotches too. She knows that this laundry did not come from a wedding. You work in silence for the first few hours. Your daughter sleeps late, and Elf doesn't come today. It's just you, hunched over a dress that doesn't belong to anyone you'll ever meet, trying to make it look untouched by whatever touched it before. The hem is torn in places, small, deliberate cuts. Maybe from shoes. Maybe from dragging. You clean without thought now. Just movement, rinse, press, soak, lift, lay flat. Breathe. By midday, your daughter wakes. She's better, eyes brighter, breath less shallow. You give her the rest of the apple peel from yesterday. She chews slowly, watching you. Is that for a queen? She asks. You smile faintly. No, someone who works for one. Maybe, she considers. That for a while. Do queens wash their own clothes? No, she frowns. Why not? You pause. There's no answer that makes sense to a child. Because someone always does it for them, you say. They're never alone long enough to wash anything. Your daughter stares at the silk, her fingers twitching toward the hem. Don't touch, you say gently. She retracts her hand, but her eyes stay on it. To her, it might as well be a magic cloth, a piece of another world. A world of palaces and rich women in secret rooms where voices are not raised but servants are. In the late afternoon, Elif finally appears. She carries her boy on her back, wrapped in a shawl. He's been sick again. She doesn't say it, but the strain on her face is plain. I can't stay, she whispers. I just came to ask, do you have any of that tea left? You nod and fetch a small bundle of the herbs you boiled for your daughter. You don't ask how she knew you had any left. These things spread like warm water in a shallow pan. Everyone sees what everyone else has. She presses a coin into your hand, not silver, but a heavy copper one. You start to shake your head, but she grips your fingers and closes them over it. Take it, she says. You do? You return to the laundry. The silk is cleaner now, though the embroidery has lost some of its color, so it's never going to come out perfect, not after what happened to it. But it's passable. So with careful folding, it'll look nearly untouched. You hang it behind the doorway from the usual lines. Too much wind could ruin the work. You use the finer clothespins, the ones you carved yourself from the fig tree outside. That evening, the palace boy returns. He does not knock this time. He just stands in the alley, waiting. You give him the folded bundle. He takes it without a word. Then he surprises you. Thank you, he says. You blink. He's never spoken before, beyond names and instructions. You nod again, unsure of what to say. That night, you think about the woman who wore the dress. What happened to her? Whether she cried when it tore, or whether she'd been silent too. You wonder who she is. She's allowed to say. Whether she also watches other people scrub things away for her. You lie awake long after the others sleep, your eyes tracing the patterns of shadows on the ceiling. If laundry holds stories, how many secrets do you carry each week? And if the palace ever falls, would it be the washerwomen who remember the truth? Winter comes early to Istanbul, but it lingers slowly, drawing its breath out across weeks of damp stone. Brittle mornings in the hollow groan of shutters in the wind. You feel it in your bones before the city dines in your wrists, your shoulders, your knees. They begin to creak, stiffen, slow. It makes the lifting harder, the scrubbing slower. But the work doesn't pause for cold. It's the laundry that feels winter first, even before the people. Clothes no longer dry on the lines the same way. They hang stiff and heavy, catching frost before the sun can warm them. The steam from boiling water rises in thick plumes, turning your small corner of the courtyard into a shifting mist of heat and cold air. Your fingers chap, then split. You wrap them in cloth. Keep working. The palace still sends its bundles. And the steward still expects excellence, even if the wind howls hard enough to shake the shutters from their hinges. Spoiled cloth is still a spoiled cloth. Season be damned. One morning, the palace boy arrives with a message, not a bundle. He tells you the wash must be brought to the Yalia wooden summer mansion on the Bosphorus, used by visiting officials. It isn't summer though, and that makes the request strange. Still, he offers coin up front, a silver crew more than you'd earn in 3 weeks. You don't ask questions, you just nod and accept the coin. Elif watches from her window as you prepare. She doesn't come out. Her boy's fever is back, and she's saving every shred of cloth and firewood to keep him warm. You leave her a scrap of soap and a handful of lentils before you go. Not as payment, not as charity, just because that's what women like you do for each other when there's no one else. The journey to the Yali takes over an hour. You walk first, then take a ferry across the choppy waters. The cold wind bites through your shawl and whistles through the seams of your coat. Istanbul's shoreline flickers past in grays and blacks boats, half submerged at the docks. Men hauling nets, children chasing stray dogs, cats curled into fish crates. The Yali is beautiful. Pale wood, latticed windows, a gate with polished brass hinges. Not built for work like yours, but for leisure. Warm evenings, gentle gossip, summer lounging. You step inside and are led to a side courtyard where the servants direct you. They speak with strange accents, Balkan, or perhaps Circassian. You say little, only nod. Take the bundled linens they give you. They want it back in 2 days. The walk back is heavier, not just from the weight of the cloth, but from the knowledge of the hours it will take. The bundle includes bed sheets embroidered with silver thread, curtains that smell faintly of rosewater, and personal linens delicate, nearly sheer. It's kind of fabrics that wrinkle under too much water and bleed under too much soap. You boil water in shifts. Your aunt watches the pot while you sort. You soak first dash water for the thicker cloth, vinegar rinse for the silk. Your daughter fans the fire with a bundle of dry mint stems. The air smells like smoke and herbs, and your knees ache as you kneel to scrub the sheets. By evening, you've only finished half. You sleep for a few hours and begin again at first light. No time to pause. The fire must be kept burning. The wind seeps through the cracks in the wall. On the second day, Elif visits. Her face is red from the wind, and she carries a small basin to help. Her boy is better, she says, or at least breathing easier. You don't talk much, just wash side by side until your fingers are numb. At one point, she asks softly, "Do you ever dream of stopping?" You smile bitterly. "I dream of hot baths, and a day without lifting anything heavier than a spoon." She laughs. It's a tired laugh, but a real one. You finish the last sheet by sunset. The cloth is almost dry when the palace boy arrives again. This time, he's not alone. A woman stands behind him. Not a noblewoman, not a servant either. Somewhere in between. She examines your work in silence, running her fingers over the hems. She says nothing, but she leaves behind another coin. You try not to show your surprise. That makes 2 silver kuru now. Your aunt raises an eyebrow when you return home. She counts the coins carefully, then hides them in the spice jar. You'll use some for fuel, some for medicine. Maybe even a few scraps of sweetmeats for your daughter's next name day. But that night, as you lay in bed, the ache in your joints blooming into fire, you wonder how many more winters you can do this. What happens when the coins stop? Or worse, when your body can no longer earn them? The invitation is not written. It arrives as a whisper passed from neighbor to neighbor until it reaches you in the form of a question. Are you going to the hammam this week? A tea doesn't mean a social visit. You are not being asked if you want to bathe. You are being asked if you want to work. The hammam, the public bathhouse, is where women gather, some to gossip, some to clean themselves, and some, like you, to scrub and sweat for a wage. You've avoided working inside a hammam until now. Too many stories, too many rules, too much steam, and not enough privacy. Brought the silver coins from the palace are nearly spent, and winter doesn't ease up for the poor. You send your aunt to ask discreetly which hammam is taking help. She returns in the evening and tells you the Karabakh hammam near the water fountain with the cracked lion mouth. They need an extra hand for laundry and backroom folding. 3 days a week, coin payment. Not much, but steady. You rise early the next morning and wrap your hands in cloth. The last few days of wringing in cold air have made your knuckles split again. You pack your own soap chest and casing, tie your hair back under your scarf. Your daughter sleeps as you leave, one hand curled around her own braid. The Karabakh hammam is a building you've passed many times but never entered. Its outer walls are stained with smoke and lichen. The door groans on its hinge. Inside, it's warmer than you expect. Ick, with the scent of eucalyptus, lemon, and heat-soaked stone. The warmth wraps around you like wool, and you're struck by the sudden desire to sit and let your limbs go slack. But you are not here to rest. The woman who greets you wears a ring on every finger and speaks quickly. She doesn't ask your name, just tells you where to stand, what to carry, and what not to touch. No speaking to the clients, no resting on the benches, no asking questions. You nod. You've spent years following silent rules. This is nothing new. You are taken behind the marble walls to a corner space near the heated water tanks. The air here is wet, heavy, and strangely musical, the sound of dripping and soft echoing, voices bouncing off stone. Your first task is to carry wet towels to the wringers. Then comes folding, then restocking the linen room with dry cloths. You don't wash directly at first. Another woman does that. She's older, with wrists like tree roots and eyes that flick from corner to corner like a cat's. You recognize her. Not her name, but her kind. One of the washerwomen who crossed into hammam work years ago and never came back. At one point, she catches you watching and says flatly, "You'll get used to the heat, but not the silence." You understand what she means after the first hour? Here, no one speaks unless spoken to. The women who come to bathe are mostly wives of merchants or mid-level court officials. Some are older, veiled tightly, even in steam. Others are younger, more carefree, more careless. Their speech is casual, sometimes cruel. You hear the things they say about their servants, their husbands, their rivals. You fold a towel with stiff fingers and wonder what they would say if they knew you were listening. By midday, your shawl is soaked with sweat. Your head spins slightly from the steam, and your wrists ache from the repetitive lifting. A woman drops her towel near your feet and doesn't look at you as she walks away. You pick it up. There is no thank you. You think of Elif, of a boy coughing under 3 layers of cloth, and the way she once thanked you without saying it, just by sharing a spoonful of lentils. In the hammam, everything feels observed, watched, not by the women who bathe, but by the servants, the attendants, the guards at the edge of the women's section. You don't feel unsafe, but you do feel seen in a way that makes your skin prickle in the back room. You spot something stranger, pile of unwashed cloth in a bin marked discarded. You ask softly if you can take one of the threadbare towels home for rags. The older woman narrows her eyes, then shrugs. That evening, you wrap it around your daughter's feet to keep them warm. By the third day, you know how to move through the hammam's back corridors without bumping into other workers. You learn where to lean to ease your back, how to dry your hands over the water basin steam to soften your fingers again. A rhythm builds, not one you like, exactly, but one you can follow. When your shift ends, the older washerwoman hands you your coin in a folded piece of paper. Obey. She doesn't say anything, but the look in her eyes is both warning and welcome. That night, you sit on your doorstep in the cold air, watching the steam rise from the bowl where you just washed your daughter's feet. You think about the walls of the hammam, the sweat, the weight of folded towels. You wonder, if you keep working there week after week, will it change you? Will the heat melt your memories of the basin by the wall? Will the hush of polished marble replace the crack of winter air? Will you simply become another shadow in the hammam, forgotten by the women who never learned your name? The pot is boiling again. Not the small kettle you use for tea, but the great black cauldron, so wide you can barely lift the lid without your arm trembling. It sits on bricks in the courtyard behind your building, like a quiet monster, its belly full of scalding linen and lye. The steam rises up into the morning, thicker than mist, and the neighbors know what it means. Someone's washing again. Someone's working. Someone's trying to stay afloat. But not all the neighbors are content just to nod at your industry and keep to their own pots. Istanbul is a city of walls and windows, of whispers and sidelong glances. And today, for the first time in a long while, you hear your name being spoken before you've opened your mouth. It starts with a small comment, almost casual. It's an old woman with no teeth and eyes like black olives watches you stir the laundry and says, "The hammam's made her proud, eh?" You glance up. She isn't smiling. Later, as you hang cloth on the line, two young women pause nearby and murmur to each other. One gestures toward your arms bare to the elbow from the work. The other shakes her head and mutters something about no shame. You don't say anything, you never do, but the comments settle on your shoulders, heavy as wet wool. It's not that you've done anything wrong. You've worked, you've scrubbed, you've paid in sweat and cracked skin. But somehow, in the eyes of some, a woman who earns coins inside a bathhouse, especially one like you, without a husband to vouch for her suspect. Never mind that you never stepped beyond the laundry door. Never mind that you barely spoke above a whisper the entire time. You've come home smelling faintly of lemon oil and rich women's perfume, and that's enough. Aleph hears the rumors before you do as she comes to your door that evening, her lips tight, and says only, "Don't go to the fountain tomorrow." Don't argue. That night, you boil a second batch of water in the back, far from prying eyes. Your daughter helps quietly, untying knots and passing you wooden paddles for stirring. Her fingers are nimble now. She folds faster than most adults, careful and sharpened. It makes you proud, sad. You speak softly, mostly to yourself. When I was your age, I didn't know how to wash anything except my own hands. She doesn't reply, but she gives you a look half shy, half solemn, that tells you she understands more than you think. In the morning, your aunt wakes early and takes your place at the fountain. Just for a day, she says. She still remembers how to trade a bucket of clear water for one of ash-soaked gray. She can fend off the stairs. You work inside instead. There are still stains to beat, hymns to mend, cloths to fold. The palace hasn't stopped sending orders. In fact, there's more than ever. The Yali sent new pillowcases, monogrammed in gold thread. The embroidery is so fine, you feel nervous even touching it. Elif stops by at noon. She brings bread and sits beside you without asking. I told them, you don't even scrub in the bathing room, she says quietly. You don't ask who them is. You already know, she adds. And anyway, if they saw what we deal with, they'd never lift another hymn in their life. You nod. It's true. These women who talk have never wrung a cloth so tight their palms bled. They've never scrubbed night soil out of bed linens or pulled blood from silk with cold vinegar in winter. Their hands are soft, their voices sharp, but you carry the city's stains in your fingers. Later, while your aunt stirs the evening stew, you sit with your daughter and let her brush your hair. It's a small thing, but it reminds you that your body is not only for work, that you are still a woman, not just a washer. I heard you're famous now. Your aunt jokes from the corner. You roll your eyes. Infamous, more like. She shrugs. It's the same thing after a while. That night, someone knocks on your door. You open it to find a quiet woman in a green shawl. She doesn't smile. She simply holds out a bundle. From the steward's wife, she says, "Hey, needs soaking, but the stains must stay." You blink, stay. The woman nods once. She wants them softened, not removed. The lady is making a point. You take the bundle. When you unwrap it later, you find the fabric torn not badly, but deliberately. And the stains are rust-colored, not fresh, not blood, but visible, meant to be seen, meant to say something. Politics lives in everything in this city, even laundry, maybe especially laundry. You soak the cloth as instructed. You dab, you pat, you do not scrub, you fold it back with precision. And as you set the finished bundle aside, you wonder what other secrets, what other messages pass through your hands without your knowing. And if one day you stopped folding and started telling, would anyone believe what the washerwoman saw? The morning begins with silence. Not the usual kind, the calm before chores, before footsteps on cobblestones and the clatter of pails, but a stillness that feels weighted, alert. You sense it in the way the birds do not sing above the tiled rooftops, and how your daughter's voice lowers to a whisper before even asking for breakfast. Your aunt notices it too. She watches the sky from the doorway, as if waiting for smoke or messengers or something worse. In a city like Istanbul, silence can be louder than bells. By midday, the rumors have found their way even to you. Someone at the Palacean officials, wife, or perhaps a young noblewoman has gone missing, disappeared in the night. No noise, no notes, just a bundle of clothing left behind, found crumpled near a closed garden gate, and now the steward's boy arrives. You hear his footfalls before you see him. He is older now, taller than when he first began his errands, but he still doesn't knock unless it's urgent. You open the door. "Special laundry," he says, holding out a cloth-covered bundle. His face is pale, lips tight, same as before. He hesitates. No, different. He doesn't explain further, just hands it over and leaves without a word. You unfold the cloth inside. It's not from the hammam or the palace laundry this time. It's personal, too personal. An underskirt, delicate and torn at the seam. A headscarf, finely woven with a faint perfume you don't recognize. And something else, something wrapped tightly in its own cloth. A letter, sealed but smudged. You stare at it for a long time. You're not meant to open it, but you're also not meant to wash around it. If it's stained, you must clean it. If it's damaged, you must restore it. But the sealets, official Ottoman, not decorative, and the scarf. It bears a tiny mark at the edge, a stitched crescent moon inside a circle. It's not common, it's not servant's embroidery. You set the letter aside, carefully. You wash the garments with trembling hands. The perfume releases into the steam and reminds you of late summer of quince and wet stone. The smell lingers long after the garments are clean, as if the air itself refuses to let go of this woman. Whoever she was, your daughter asks who it belongs to. You say, someone important. She frowns. More important than the palace women. You consider that important in a different way. That night, as the wind blows cold through the shutters, you find yourself awake long after the others sleep. You think of the missing girl. You picture her walking barefoot through the palace corridors, scarf slipping, breath held tight in her chest. You imagine her clutching the letter, unsure whether to deliver it, burn it, or hide it under stone. You do not open the letter, but you do wrap it again, carefully, and place it at the top of the folded garments. Whoever picks it up will know it wasn't disturbed, but they'll also know you saw it. The next morning, the steward's boy returns. He doesn't ask for coin. He doesn't meet your eyes, just takes the parcel and goes. Later, Elif stops by with barley bread. She sits while you boil cloth and tells you what she's heard. They say it wasn't the first girl. It's the first one anyone noticed. You glance up. They say she left behind more than laundry. She adds, they say there was a pair of shoes, brand new, never worn. You both fall quiet. That evening, you go through your basket of scraps, the torn cloths, too ruined to mend, the handkerchiefs left unclaimed. You realize you know more than you thought. Over the years, you've washed stains no one wanted spoken of. You've ironed away secrets, folded silence into soft bundles. Sometimes, you've even buried them, burnt the evidence in the hearth, and watched it rise like smoke. Your work is full of the unspoken, and you are full of the knowledge that comes from cleaning other people's mistakes. You wonder, one day the stories came pouring out, whose voices would be louder, the washerwomen's, or those who paid them to forget. You've always known that cloth remembers. Like mouths, it does not swear loyalty. It does not protect names. It cannot be bribed into silence. Cloth tells the truth in yellowed sweat lines, in threads frayed by desperate fingers, in creases worn deep by the shape of hidden things. The thought comes to you unbidden. One cold morning, as you hang a long white undersheet in the courtyard and see clear as a map the outline of a body's weight pressed into the fabric. A knee here, a shoulder there, curve of a neck where someone slept too long or didn't sleep at all. You stare at it longer than you should, not because it's strange, but because it's so ordinary. What unsettles you? Your aunt is boiling lentils inside. Your daughter is sorting buttons into an old soapbox. You're the only one watching the ghost in the fabric. The palace hasn't sent for you in over a week now. That isn't normal. Someone else is handling their wash, or they're not washing at all. You're not sure which is more worrying. Instead, today's work comes from a merchant's household near the spice market. His wife sent 7 towels, all with a deep red band at the edge, and an apron that smells like fig, jam, and wood smoke. There's also a baby's blanket coarsely woven with 2 broken threads at the corner. You find yourself staring at the broken threads again and again. There are always messages in cloth, if you're looking, okay? And you've been looking longer than most. When Elif visits later that day, she brings news. The girl from the palace, they found her. You pause, your brush stills in your hand. Where? In a courtyard, near Yuskadar, alive, but silent. Won't speak, won't eat. You let out a breath you hadn't realized you were holding. They say she was carrying nothing, not even shoes, just a scrap of cloth in her sleeve. What kind of cloth? Liv shrugs. Didn't say. You both sit in silence for a while. Then she adds, I wonder if it's something you washed. You don't answer, because deep down you think it might be. That night, your daughter asks to hear a story. Not one about kings or camels or clever foxes. She wants a real story, something from your life. You start to say, you're too tired. But then you remember the scrap of cloth, okay? And the way silence can turn sharp if left alone. Too long, too long. So you tell her the story of a sheet. Just a sheet. White cotton. Nothing special. You tell her about how it was washed and folded and washed again. You tell her about the stain that wouldn't come out. the one shaped like a spilled spoonful of pomegranate syrup. You say that some stains can't be removed, not with lye, not with ash water, not even with prayer. You tell her it was beautiful. Anyway, she falls asleep before the end. But you finish the story anyway, 'cause sometimes saying things aloud keeps them from fading. Later, as you scrub the day's last cloth, you wonder about that girl. Not where she is now, but what she remembers. Did she choose the cloth? Or was it given to her? Did she stitch the crescent moon herself? Or did someone do it for her? And when she ran, did she carry it like a flag or like a secret? You lift the cloth from the basin, wring it gently, and hang it by the fire. As the steam rises, you feel a thought rising too slow and heavy, like something half buried coming loose in the soil. If you were to leave one message behind, just one, for someone else to find in a cloth one day, ... what would it be? You never expected to be summoned, not by name, not by letter, and certainly not by the steward himself, but one early morning, just as the sky is slipping from violet into the bleached gray of winter, the palace boy comes again. He waits outside your door like always, but this time he does not carry laundry. No bundle, no stains to beat out. It's just a folded paper and a short command. They want you. You wipe your hands, tuck your scarf tighter under your chin, and follow. The palace gates are less intimidating now than they were when you first passed through them years ago. It's not because they've grown smaller, but because you've grown harder. Calloused. You've seen the city behind the silks. You know the weight of velvet that hides bruises. You've washed the garments that speak louder than any edict. Still, the closer you walk toward the courtyard of the inner quarters, the more your feet hesitate. These stones were not laid for washerwomen. They were laid for footsteps lighter than yours, for silk slippers, not bare heels. You are led to a narrow room behind the servants' hallway. It smells of ink and rose oil. A tall woman sits by, brazier, writing something slowly on parchment. Her robes are plain, but her fingers are covered in rings. Not for decoration, for message. Each one a different seal. You recognize her? She is not the sultan's wife, nor even a concubine. But she is the woman who carries their words when they do not wish to speak. She looks up, briefly, not a face, but at your hands. You washed the garments from the alley. She nod. You saw the scarf with the crescent. Another nod. You didn't speak of it. Still, you shake your head. She studies you. Would you? You feel your mouth go dry? Not out of fear, but from the sheer weight of the moment. No, you say quietly, because cloth speaks on its own. Something in her eyes shifts. Is not approval, but recognition. She gestures to a side table. Upon it is a wrapped bundle, smaller than most. The cloth is blue, finer than anything you've ever touched. Silk blend with gold thread, not royal, but not far from it. This, she says, you will wash, then deliver, directly, to the back garden of the Suleimani Hammam. You glance up. It will not be inspected, she continues, but it must be clean. You lift the bundle. It's heavier than it looks. Inside are two garments, one plain, the other embroidered at the collar, and, at the bottom, a folded cloth with writing, inked into the fabric itself. Not a letter, not a document, a story. You do not read it. You do not need to. Later that evening, as you heat the basin and press the creases out of the robe, you notice small tears along the sleeving stitched recently, torn open, then resewn by a clumsy hand. You mend them carefully, with thread your aunt saved from the last market trip. You are careful to match the color, to make it seem untouched. The next morning, you set out before the city fully wakes. The bundle is tied in brown cloth, now unmarked, plain. You walk slowly but steadily, hands tight on the strings. The Suleimani Hammam is grander than any you've worked in. You do not enter. You simply approach the back garden, where the lemon trees bend low with fruit that will not ripen until spring. A woman waits there, not veiled, but not open-faced either. She wears layers like armor. Her hands are bare. When she sees you, she doesn't speak. You hand her the bundle. She touches the fabric once, briefly, then nods. It is over in less than a minute. You return to your district by a different route, not because you are afraid, but because you feel the need to walk, to move, to let the wind clear your thoughts. At home, your daughter is waiting with a cracked bowl of rice. She says nothing, but you see, she's kept the fire going. She's learning. That evening, your aunt lights a small pinch of dried rose petals in the hearth, as she always does on quiet days when the world feels heavier than usual. The smell fills the room. You feel a strange calm. You've delivered laundry before, many times, but this one was different. It wasn't just a robe or a scarf. It was a message, a gesture, a line between one world and another. And as you sit cross-legged near the coals, your hands still faintly smelling of soap and smoke, you think, how many more stories are being written, not with ink or words, but with fabric, ash, and silence? There are things you fold without thinking. Towels, undershirts, the thin muslin scarves used for modesty and dust. Then there are the things you fold carefully, slowly, ceremonial garments, bridal veils, burial cloths. And then there are the things you fold because you must, even though they were never meant to be folded at all. Stories, secrets, names. It is late winter now. The snow has not fallen, but it might. The clouds hang low over the rooftops, swollen and sulking, and the wind no longer howls, it creeps. The cold that worms its way through cracks in the wall and the joints of your spine. The work never slows, even as your breath clouds the air in front of you with every exhale. The fountain is stiff with ice along its stone lips, but the buckets must still be hauled, the cauldrons still filled. Water scalds colder before it boils, and even your soap takes longer to melt in your hands. But you work, because the work is the only thing that does not turn its back on you this week. The palace laundress stops by, not the boy, not a servant, but the woman herself. Her eyes are sharp, and her voice is so soft, it feels like dust. She brings with her a single shawl, ivory-colored, too fine for daily use. She's gone, the woman said simply. You don't ask who? You don't have to. Tell the girl, the one who ran, or disappeared, or survived is no longer in the city. That much is clear. You run your fingers over the shawl. There's a spot near the hem where the weave has loosened, picked apart, and then retied. A knot instead of a stitch. Like someone wanted to remember where the thread broke. She asked for this to be sent to you. The laundress adds. You look up. She said you were the one who made it soft again. There's no payment, no request, just that. You place the shawl gently in the back corner of your chest. Queen, your daughter's outgrown shift in your aunt's wedding cloth, still faintly scented with clove. You won't wear it, but you'll keep it. That evening, Elif joins you by the hearth, carrying a small bundle of her own. Her son's fever has passed. She's pale and tired, but smiling. I found something strange, she says, unwrapping the cloth. It's a linen sheet, badly mended, but embroidered with a line of thread near the edge, not gold or silver, but red. It wasn't there before, she says. Look, you do. And there it is, a small stitched phrase in Ottoman script. Just 2 words. GRDM Seni. I saw you. You both sit quietly for a long while. I think it's from her, Elif whispers. She left it behind. Maybe she did. Or maybe it's a message meant for all the washerwomen who saw too much and spoke too little that night. You dream of laundry, but not the way you usually do. You dream of folded cloth with voices sewn into the hems of robes that whisper their stories as you rinse them, of towels that remember the hands that held them, of steam that carries names you never learned but never forgot. When you wake, the air is still cold, but the world feels slightly less silent. Your daughter is already awake, sorting dried cloth by size. You kiss the top of her head. In the days that follow, you notice the little things again. A neighbor leaving her bucket closer to your door than usual. A coin left atop your soap instead of tucked inside it. The street children no longer asking if you work in the hammam, but instead saying, "That's the lady who fixes things." And you realize you are not just a washerwoman anymore. You are someone who knows where the fabric thins, where the thread snaps, where the stories hide. And even if no one ever writes your name in the records of the palace or the courts, you will still have marked the city in suds, in silence, in small repairs. You fold another sheet. You keep going. But in the back of your mind, a question lingers. If one day your daughter grows up and inherits your basin, your cloths, your quietness, what stories will she carry in the folds of her own work? It doesn't happen loudly. There is no thunderclap, no scream, no warning. Just a faint, irregular papa sound you might miss if the room weren't quiet enough to hear your own breathing. You glance over your shoulder just in time to see the basin's side split open, water pooling across the stone floor in a slow, disbelieving ripple. The basin is older than your daughter. Older, perhaps, than your memory of first lifting a wet sheet with your arms half the length they are now. It came from your mother's aunt, handed down after her own hands had curled with arthritis. Cracks had formed before, hairline ones you patched with wax or prayer, depending on the day. Okay? But this is different. You stand in the spreading puddle and just look at it. The water is still warm. You feel the heat against your toes. Your daughter rushes to the doorway, bare feet skidding slightly. "Mama, it's cracked," you say softly. It's finally cracked. Your aunt, hearing the commotion, joins you in the courtyard, her hands still dusty with flour. She says nothing, just takes a slow breath and then clicks her tongue. It served longer than it should have. Nod, numb. It's not just a basin, it's the heart of your work, the center of every day for 2 decades. Losing it is like losing a tooth or a part of your spine. You mop the water with old towels. You lift the fragments carefully, reverently, place them in a basket lined with straw. You will not throw them away. Not yet. The next day, you visit the ceramics man at the edge of the market near the Yeni. Kemi. He is a quiet man with a chipped thumbnail and a laugh like a worn-out drum. He shows you new basins, too smooth, too bright, too expensive. Of them carry the weight of your old one. But as you turn to go, he reaches under the counter and produces a shallow, wide basin with a repaired rim. It was used by a cook in Calada. It's not perfect, but it holds heat. You run your fingers over its edge. There are tiny indentations. Faint smoke marks history, pressed into clay. How much? He names a price. It's less than you'd feared, more than you can easily spare. You pay him anyway. When you return home, your aunt watches silently as you unwrap it. Then she touches the rim and nods once. It'll do. You spend that afternoon seasoning it, boiling rosemary stems and lemon peels, as your aunt instructs. It's an old tradition, one rooted more in memory than science. But you follow it because some things should begin with scent and silence. As the water simmers, Elif visits with news. The hammam's furnace is down. No hot water for 2 days. The wealthy women are furious. There are rumors that one of them, furious, shivering, slapped a girl for bringing cold towels. You feel an odd pang, not of sympathy for the slapped or the slapper, but of detachment. Like you've stepped out of that circle. You haven't been to the hammam in weeks. The palace laundry has returned steadily. They no longer send messages, just bundles. You work in peace. The stories, for now, have paused, but inside, you sense a shift. You are still washing, but you. I'm also watching. You clean a scarf later that night and notice a blood stain near the hem. Tiny, almost nothing. You dab it with vinegar and salt, but a faint pink shadow remains. The cloth doesn't lie. You wonder what happened. You wonder if anyone will ask. You wrap the cleaned items, as always carefully, respectfully, but tuck a tiny sprig of mint into the bundle. A signal. One only someone paying attention would notice. The next week, you receive a bundle with a mint leaf folded in return. You say nothing, but it stays with you. The new basin works well, better than expected. The water stays warm, the walls don't sweat. Even your daughter says the cloths dry faster. It surprises you how quickly your hands memorize its shape. Still, one night you visit the courtyard and find yourself staring at the basket of broken ceramic from the old basin. You sit beside it on the cold ground and touch the edge of one piece. You think of all the hands that touched it before you. The steam it held, the stains it rinsed away, the silences it kept. You think, should we keep everything that breaks, patch it, reuse the shards? Or is there a time to let some pieces remain? Broken. There are few things more intimate than another woman's soap. Not the hard bar you buy in bulk for household use, scraped down to a pale curve by weeks of labor, but the good kind. It's the kind someone once gave as a wedding gift. Olive oil laced with rose water. A touch of almond oil if you're lucky. Maybe a pressed sprig of lavender at the center. It's the kind of soap kept wrapped in cloth, used slowly, sparingly, as if it holds not just scent, but memory. You find a sliver of it, tucked into the latest bundle from the Yalia mistake, perhaps. It's nestled between two worn undergarments, wrapped in muslin, as if forgotten in haste. The scent hits you immediately, something faint and far away, like a garden you only walked through once. Long ago, when you were still wearing shoes that clicked on stone. You pause, you consider sending it back untouched, but the muslin is damp, and the soap is softening at the edges. If you don't unwrap it, it will spoil. And so, with careful hands, you peel away the cloth. It is the palest green, oval-shaped. There's a pressed leaf at its center. Not lavender bay leaf, perhaps. You're not sure. The bitter, oddly warm, makes your eyes sting with something you don't quite understand. You use it to wash a single scarf. Not one of the palace items. Not one from the merchant's home. Just a scarf of your own plain cotton, dull blue from years of sun. You scrub slowly, not out of necessity, but reverence, as if the soap is speaking a language you haven't heard in years. Your daughter comes in halfway through and wrinkles her nose. Smells like tea. She says, you smile. Smells like a memory. You reply, and that's what it is. Soap carries memory in a way cloth never can. You've learned that. Cloth absorbs stains and shape, but soap carries emotion. That night, you wrap the sliver in a fresh piece of cloth and tuck it under your pillow. You know it's foolish. You know you'll return it perhaps even tomorrow. But for one night, you let yourself keep something beautiful without cost. The next morning, send it back in a small cloth bundle with a note, unsigned. It arrived by mistake. Teach what I could. No reply comes. But 2 days later, the next parcel arrives with a cake of cheap olive soap tied with string. Not perfumed, not soft, but useful. You take it for what it is. I reply. Work continues. The days stretch. The wind shifts. Istanbul breathes in slow cycles, markets bustling, then silent. Mosques echoing with prayer, then falling still. Laundry reflects the rhythm. 1 week, bloodied bandages from a skirmish outside the city gates. Another week, satin sashes for a wedding at the governor's home. You touch each with the same hands. You wash each in the same water. You begin to realize something. Your life is not separate from theirs. You are not beneath the women whose names you never learn. You are not lesser than the scribe whose robes you launder, or the girl whose shawl you rescued from mold. You're a part of it, Alan, invisible thread in the tapestry. They live their lives loudly. You live yours quietly, but the cloth runs through both. Elif brings lentils one night and says something strange. I think we should keep a record. You look up. Of what? She shrugs. Of stains. The ones that come back. The ones that don't. The ones that carry a smell we can't place. You laugh, but then you consider it. You could, couldn't you? Not a journal, not something anyone would read aloud, but a quiet account. Notes in the margins of your own memory. A way to name what was never spoken. And so you begin, in the back of an old ledger, long since abandoned by your aunt. You're right. January 3rd shawl, thin, striped, lavender scent, tear in left corner, like a goodbye. January 8th, baby cloth, stiff, smelled of fig and iron, marked with a date in red thread. New life, old story. January 10th, sash, silk stained at chest, dried blood. No name. The entries aren't long. They don't need to be. You keep the ledger hidden, but not locked. If someone found it, they wouldn't understand. They'd see laundry, not lives. But you know, in each night, as you write one more line, you wonder what would your own entry say if someone washed your scarf long after you were gone. What scent would they remember? What thread would they follow? It is almost spring. Not quite. The rooftops still shimmer with frost in the early hours, and your fingers still crack at the knuckles when you forget to dry them properly. But something in the air has shifted. The pigeons coo more softly. The cats in the alley stretch in the sun and blink like prophets. The city is waking. You find yourself standing longer at the fountain these days. Not because the water runs slower, but because you no longer hurry through the silence. You listen to the sound of your own work, to the soft splashing, to the heavy pause between rinses. There is something sacred in it. It's the way the water rushes over stones worn smoother than the voice of a call to prayer. The way your hands know exactly when the cloth is clean sometimes. You think the water remembers more than you do. It remembers the woman who came weeping into the square, her husband's sash clutched in her hand. It remembers the spilled soap that froze overnight and made children laugh when they slid across the courtyard the next morning. It remembers the blood that ran pink for days after the soldier's funeral, even though no one spoke his name. You think of all the things that passed through your basin: silks, cottons, linen, secrets. You remember which cloths tore too easily and which ones held fast despite their age. Some fabrics fray after one touch. Others cling like breath. You begin to notice the rhythm of what returns. A certain pillowcase with a mended seam keeps coming back. The woman at the yali must favor it. A child's garment, increasingly patched but never discarded, keeps showing up in bundles from the merchant's household. Someone loves that child very much. You've never seen their face. There is power in being the one who sees the evidence, but never the event. One day, a stranger comes. Not a palace boy, not a neighbor, not even a messenger from the hammam. A woman older than you, but not elderly, dressed too modestly to be a noble and too neatly to be poor. Her shoes are polished. Her veil is pressed. She carries a package under one arm, tied with blue twine. She does not give a name. She only says, "This has been sitting too long. Spalt, I couldn't face it." She leaves the bundle and walks away before you can ask anything. Inside, a man's robe. It's fine but faded, with a tear at the shoulder. A handkerchief folded too tightly, its corners damp from something old and unspeakable. The scarf lack, thin and completely scentless. You clean them all, gently, slowly. There is something ceremonial about it. When you return them to the address written in curling script inside the bundle, there is no answer at the door. You leave them with the porter, along with a wrapped bar of rose soap from your own stash. You don't expect thanks. You don't need it. Your aunt watches you closely that night. You're changing, he says. You don't respond. You used to just wash things. Now you do something else. Like what? I'm not sure yet, she admits, but the cloths leave your hands quieter than before. You let that settle in the air. Maybe she's right. You begin taking fewer jobs. Not because the work is too hard, but because you've started choosing what stories you're willing to touch. You mend what is mendable. You return what is ready to be let go. Your daughter begins collecting scraps, not useful ones, just fragments. A bit of embroidery from a ruined pillow, a lace cuff torn from a forgotten dress. She presses them between pages of an old book, as if she's keeping pieces of the world. You don't stop her? One night, she asks, do you think cloth remembers people? You think of all the items you've held. The ones that smelled of fear. The ones that smelled of joy. The ones that smelled of nothing because they had been washed too many times. It's like names spoken until they lost their sound. You tell her, I think people disappear when they're no longer held by anything. A cloth is one way of holding them. She nods. In the weeks that follow, you begin folding more carefully, not just for clients, but for yourself. You press creases with your palms, the way your mother once did. You tie ribbons around garments that might not return. You wrap bundles with quiet thanks, as if you were thanking the item for its witness. You begin to wonder if every washerwoman is really a kind of archivist, a quiet scribe, priestess of the ordinary. The water doesn't laugh. The cloth doesn't praise you, but in their silence, you feel seen. And one day, while rinsing a simple cotton blouse under the morning light, you see your reflection in the water, older, tired, but calm, and you think, if the water remembers everything I've done, will it also forgive the things I couldn't fix? You've begun to starch the collars again. For years, you left them soft easier on the fingers, less prone to cracking in the cold, but lately, you've returned to the old method. Boil the rice water down to a paste. Cool it until it thickens like broth. Dip each collar gently. Press with a flat iron heated over coals. It takes longer. It wears at your joints, but the results are cleaner, more upright. Even the simplest blouse stands proud again, like it's remembering how to hold its shape. It's not about impressing clients. Not anymore. It's about the dignity of structure. You wonder if the women who wear these collars ever realize the difference. Maybe they don't. Maybe they think their backs are straighter from pride or privilege. But you know the truth. Someone else did the shaping. Someone else did the hard, hot work so that their sleeves wouldn't sag. Their hems wouldn't twist. Their shoulders would sit just so. You know, because your hands ache by noon. Your knees swell by dusk, and still the collar holds. You finish 3 batches that morning. 1 for the merchant's family, 1 for a school teacher whose daughter dropped off the laundry herself, and 1 for a widow who pays in dried apricots and never says much beyond thank you. You wrap each parcel in brown cloth, tie them with simple cord, key, and mark the corners with chalk. Red dot for starch, white for fragrance, green for repaired stitching. It's a system you and your daughter invented, though no one else knows what. The marks mean later that week, a letter arrives. Not with a bundle. Not from the palace. It's folded, simply, written on thin paper, in a careful hand. You once returned a scarf that wasn't yours. You wrapped it in silence. I remembered. There is no name, no request, no threat. It's just that. You reread it 3 times, then fold it again and place it in the pocket of your apron. You don't show your aunt. You don't explain it to your daughter. Some things are better held close, like a handkerchief in your sleeve on a windy day, just enough to wipe the dust from your eyes if you need to. Work continues, but it feels different now. You begin keeping 2 ledgers. One for the jobs, the garments, the clients, the payment. The other for the unseen things. February 19th, red scarf, 3rd return. Torn edge, mended again. Feels like someone's still trying. February 23rd, white blouse, blood near left cuff, worn before news arrived or after. March 1, green apron, smells of cumin and tears. You write sparingly, just the essentials. The water tells you the rest. One afternoon, you come across an old bundle at the back of the storage shelf. It's long forgotten. It's wrapped in layers of waxed cloth and old method. Your aunt watches you as you untie the knots. Inside, men's trousers, torn, scorched at the knee, a belt loop missing, hint at the bottom, a kerchief stained, dark and stiff in the center. You don't ask why it was left behind. You clean it anyway. Soak it in salt water. Rub ash paste into the fabric until the scent of smoke lifts, until the color returns, however faintly. Then you wrap it again, okay? And this time, you label it, not with chalk, with ink, unclaimed, but not forgotten. Your daughter finds you later that night, writing it into your quiet ledger. She stands by your side for a while, without speaking. Then she asks, "Do you think the things we fix stay fixed?" You look at her. Her face is soft from sleep, but her eyes are wide with questions older than her years. "No," you say gently, "but I think they stay remembered." Outside, the air smells like damp stone and distant firewood. A storm might be coming, but for now, all is still. You press one final collar, fold it neatly, and place it atop the pile. It's a good press sharp, even. It's proud. And you think, what do we owe to the things that carry our shape, even when we've long left them behind? The weather turns again. It's not quite cold, not quite warm, what your aunt calls a trick season, where your joints ache like winter, but the air smells like spring. The sky above Istanbul goes soft, like bruised cloth, dull with gray and strange light, and you find yourself folding more slowly, more deliberately, as if something in the air is asking you to wait before letting go. You begin to stitch, again, not just mend, but decorate, tiny things. A rose here, a single chain of green thread along a hem there. Not for the palace, not for the merchant's family, not even for the clients who tip you with sugar cubes and dried figs. Cues, pitch for the things that would otherwise be silent. The forgotten aprons, the baby cloths that never return a second time, the shawls with no scent. Your daughter notices. She picks up the habit too. She begins practicing tiny embroidery motifs in the margins of your mending cloths, cats with 2 long legs, stars shaped like fish, crooked hearts. You don't correct her. Some things she remains slightly broken. One day, a woman you've never seen before comes to your door. She looks worn, but not poor. Her robe is clean, but faded. She carries a single garment in a silk scarf and old dress, cream-colored, with 3 buttons missing and a rip along the back seam that looks like it came from running. She doesn't say her name, only asks if you can make it whole again. You look at the dress, then at her hands. Tease, there's ink beneath her fingernails. "It won't look new," you say gently. She nods. "I'm not asking for new. I'm asking for wearable." You take the dress, and she walks away without waiting for a price. That night, you wash it slowly, the fabric nearly dissolving in your hands from age and grief. It smells like dust and cinnamon, and a bit like rain. The rip is jagged, careless, tear, or a desperate one. You stitch it closed, carefully, using a thread 1 shade darker than the fabric, just enough to show the scar. A reminder that it once tore, but didn't stay torn. You add a 4th button, mismatched, from your aunt's old tin of spares. It is rounder than the others, shinier. You wonder if she noticed. You wrap the dress in muslin, tie it with string, and set it aside. She never returns. You wait a week, then 2. On the 10th day, A boy arrives. He says nothing, just nods, takes the bundle, and disappears down the alley. You don't ask questions anymore. We only wonder. That evening, as you press a linen undershirt, your daughter comes to you, holding a cloth square. She stitched herself a tiny blue crescent sewn in the center. I want to give this to someone, she says. Who? I don't know yet. Someone who needs it. You nod. It's the same answer you've given to yourself 100 times. You begin noticing more exchanges around you. A client who begins including paper scraps with each bundle, verses, prayers, riddles. Another who ties knots in her laundry string that match the age of her child. One more each week. A street washer who begins humming your tune at the fountain. A neighbor who leaves a fresh lemon at your doorstep every Friday. Unscathed. It's not just soap and starch anymore. Something else. You're not sure what to call it. You mend, you fold, you label the bundles. But the city around you has started to respond. One morning, at the public fountain, a younger washerwoman asks if she can watch you press a collar. You show her. Slowly, patiently, she stays through the whole wash. Even through the part where you scrub the apron straps and explain how to check for soap hidden in the seams. When she leaves, she says only, "Thank you. I thought this job would break me." You reply, "It still might, but at least you'll be clean when it does." She laughs. A real laugh. You haven't heard one like that in days. That night, you lie awake, staring at the ceiling beams. Your aunt coughs from the other room. A dry cough. She hasn't been herself lately. Slower to rise, slower to eat. You say nothing, but you begin soaking her shawls at night, brushing the edges until they feel like breath. Your daughter dreams out loud now. You hear her whisper names you don't recognize. Maybe she's inventing a world of her own. Or maybe she's stitching herself into someone else's story already. You return to your ledger. Another quiet entry. March 18th. Cream dress, ripped down the back, mended, never claimed. Perhaps worn again elsewhere. Button replaced. K. Intention. Continuation. You stare at the word continuation for a while, because that's what you do, isn't it? You take broken things and let them continue. You cannot start their stories, cannot end them, but you can keep them from falling apart. And you wonder, we are nothing more than stitches in other people's fabric. It's what happens when no one is left to mend us. One morning, well before dawn, you rise to steam already curling at the windows. Not from your own stove ears, it's still cold, but from the neighbor's chimney across the alley. That house has stood empty for 3 seasons. The widow who lived there left without a word after her son vanished during the draft. You wrap a shawl around your shoulders and move to the courtyard. The basin is already half full. Your daughter must have risen early. The sky above you is still dark, but the faintest yellow light glows along the eastern edge of the rooftops. A quiet line of steam rises from the water, thin and steady. Like smoke from a candle someone forgot to snuff. The city feels paused. Not asleep, not awake, just ... Between, you begin your work slowly. Soak, scrub, rinse, fold. The routine never changes. As if the fabric has softened with understanding, for perhaps you have. There is a shawl in today's bundle with fine embroidery, a tree stitched in gold along the hem. The kind of detail most women never notice while wearing it. It wasn't made for showing off. It was made for remembering. Inside the shawl is a note. No signature. It's 4 words, written in careful hand. This belonged to her. You pause. You hold the shawl a little longer than usual. You think of all the hers who have come and gone, spoken, unnamed, unseen. Perhaps someone wants this one not to disappear. You wash it with care. You lay it out flat and press the folds gently, preserving the gold thread without warping it. When you return it, you tie a small sprig of rosemary to the string. Memory needs a scent. Later that afternoon, a basket arrives from the hammam lined with folded towels and one soiled silk robe that reeks of expensive perfume and sorrow. Your daughter helps unpack. She pauses over a towel folded wrong twice lengthwise, not once, then widthwise, not at all. This one was rushed, she says. You nod, or folded by someone who doesn't expect it to be touched again. That night, you prepare a pan of flatbread and greens for supper. Your aunt eats quietly. She's weaker now. Her breathing rattles faintly, but she still picks apart the stems like always, frowning when one is too bitter. You and your daughter eat in silence, not because there's nothing to say, but because everything that needs to be said has already been folded between you after dinner. Your daughter brings you a cloth she's been working on, a plain kerchief, carefully embroidered with a single word in blocky, beginner stitches, :cal.stay. You don't ask what it means or who it's meant for. You simply touch her hand and nod. The next day, Ella returns. She hasn't come by in weeks. Her boy had a cough. Then her sister came from the village. Then the rains made it hard to get across the market roads. But now she stands in your doorway, carrying a small basket of lemons and a roll of thick blue linen. For you, she says. No one asked for it. I just thought maybe you'd want something new. You laugh gently. Nothing I wear is new. She shrugs. There may be something unclaimed. You keep the cloth, not to wear, but to make something. Set of towels for your daughter, a table cover, a prayer shawl. You're not sure yet, but it will come. You find yourself thinking more about legacy. It's not in grand terms, not names carved into stone or pages in history books. The way a collar keeps its shape 2 weeks after you've pressed it. The way a woman wraps herself in a shawl that no longer smells of old sweat, but of rose water and starch. The way someone leaves a scarf behind on purpose, just to see if it's returned with care. You return to your ledger. Another entry. March. 30 gold-stitched shawl. Owner, unnamed, preserved, returned. Rosemary added. Message received. The city grows louder again. More carriages pass. The market buzzes with new fruit. Someone is selling soap, cut into cubes the size of children's fists. The mosque bells ring longer. The fairy horns stretch their calls across the Bosphorus like low moans. But in your courtyard, things remain slow. You teach your daughter how to test water temperature by touch, how to listen for fabric tearing under too much soap, how to judge when a stain is a story worth keeping, and when it's a story best erased. You realize you're passing on more than skills. You're passing on the pauses, the breath between the rinse and the fold, the hush that lives between two lines of steam. And you wonder if someday your daughter teaches her own child how to press a collar. Will she remember your hands, or only the warmth they left behind? Your daughter finds you sorting old cloth one morning and asks, without irony, "What are we keeping this one for?" It's a linen apron worn, nearly translucent at the belly. It's the hem ragged, where years of feet and stones and hurried hands have tugged it toward the earth. The ties are still strong, but the color has left it. It is neither white nor beige, not gray nor brown, just old, the kind of cloth the city forgets, even as it presses into the bones of women like you. You don't answer her right away. Instead, you lift the apron by its ties and let it hang in the morning air. The sun, still low, filters through it like smoke through gauze. It flutters slightly. You think of the woman who first wore it, maybe long before you ever learned to wring water from wool. You think of her kitchen, her basin, her winters. I'm not sure, you finally say. A something in me says we should. That evening, after the sun sinks behind the rooftops and the cats in the alley curl into the warmth of empty baskets, you go through the bundles again, the ones waiting to be washed, but the ones you've kept. The ones that never had a return address. The ones you couldn't bring yourself to throw away. There's a baby cap with no name stitched in the lining. A handkerchief stained with what might have been ink or blood, it's impossible to tell now. A sash, once bright blue, now the color of dried tears. In the apron, each has its own silence. You lay them out across the floor, not as laundry, but as memory. Each one is a moment someone forgot to collect, or perhaps chose to leave behind. You remember how your aunt used to hum as she worked. She's sleeping now, most of the time. Her cough has quieted, but so has everything else. You check on her nightly, place a warm cloth over her hands. She doesn't speak much, but when she opens her eyes, she smiles at the ceiling like it's telling her stories you can't hear. Elif stops by with 2 extra loaves of bread and a stitched pouch of lavender. I heard, she says, gently. You nod. She doesn't ask what later that week. The weather shifts again. A hard wind blows down from the hills, tossing leaves into the laundry lines, shaking shutters, waking the city earlier than it wants to be awake. You rise before the call to prayer, drawn to the courtyard by some instinct. Your daughter follows, rubbing sleep from her eyes. And there, in the center of the courtyard basin, is a bundle. Not yours. Not one you left. Someone placed it there in the night, wrapped in soft gray cloth, tied not with string, but with a child's belt. Inside, 3 garments, 1 child-sized, 2 adult, washed already, still damp, folded carefully, and no note. Hugh, do not cry. You simply bring them inside. You light a small fire, warm the pressing iron. You lay the garments flat and begin smoothing them, one by one. Later, your daughter asks, why did they leave it here? And you answer, because they knew someone would treat it kindly.